raised by the Honorable Bandi. Number one, I start with your question about taxes. When you're managing the economy, you don't manage it from a vacuum. You manage it on some parameters. And the parameter that you have to deal with as Kenyans is that on this side, number one, we have a debt of 10.25 trillion Kenya shillings, which needs to be repaid. The effect of not honoring that in terms of payment and honoring your financial obligations are dire. The consequences are a havoc if you don't do that. And therefore, you have to look at a way where we still remain afloat other than fall on the cliff as the economy. And that is why internal resources come in handy, and especially when we have a huge obligation of debt that we need to cater for. Let me go to and I want to respond to them sequentially, because as we said, we are coming here to have a very candid discussion. The Honorable Badi talked about stimulating the economy. Stimulus, how do stimulus work? And what are the other issues that you have to consider when you are dealing with stimulating the economy? Economy, we say all the time, is a double-edged sword. When you go to the economic toolbox, every tool you remove have both sides. And when you're talking about stimulating the economy, we are actually talking about monetary easing. We are talking about having much more money in the economy. One way of having stimulus in the economy, and I want us to reminisce actually 2008, when we had a similar thing, both in Kenya and in the US after the 2008 financial crisis, is that the government then comes out with tools, including monetary easing, where you lower the interest rates so that investment can access capital. That is one way. Mm-hmm. But then, as you do that while still looking at something we call inflation. And I said it is double-edged. Let me go slightly backward and out of Kenya. Part of the reasons why we are in the situation we are in is actually not a making of Kenya. It is a making of one country called the United States of America. What did they do? They did monetary easing during COVID time. They gave money not almost for free money. When you give free money to the economy, that monetary easing, what you do is exactly what Honorable Badi is suggesting. You stimulate demand. But when there is no commensurate in terms of supply and demand, then this demand, what it does, it increases prices of commodities. That is exactly the same problem we had in Kenya. Last year, if you look at the inflation figures, they were double digits. They were cruising to double digit in terms of, if you factor in last year's prices, the previous year, and last year's, the increment was double digit. Now, smart. This is the reality. When you are facing inflation, hyperinflation is actually worse than the alternative of not having a stimulus. Because once you have general rise in prices accelerating too much, you create what we call in the economy stagflation, where the economy can get lagged behind simply because of huge increases in prices. Now, there are two people who are very critical in the management of the economy. On one side is the central bank, both of Kenya and all the other central banks of the world, including Federal Reserve. On the other side, you have the Treasury and the executive, which majorly forms what we call fiscal policies. Mm-hmm. Fiscal policies are around government spending and around all the other issues that I talked about. Now, when you are sitting in the central bank, one of your domain is actually to put inflation within range. And one of the very common tools that you invoke is that of monetary tightening. Monetary tightening is where you raise interest rates so that the people with money find it better to go and save their money in areas that they would rather get high interest rates, including deposits in the bank, including buying government instruments. Now, what we had to do as the economy, number one, and the headache in all the economies is number one, to support the decrease in inflation. Let me leave that there for now. But before I leave there, it is not just Kenya that has done it smart. Because as we said, and I'm repeating, let us be candid. As we talk, I'm not just talking from the government side. I'm also talking as a Kenyan. If you go to the US, after COVID, they gave checks. That was part of stimulating the economy directly.
Yes.
What happened? Inflation in the US shot. Now, to control this inflation, from 2022 beginning, if you look at the Fed rate in 2022 February, it was between 0 to 0.25%. That is the interest rate that the Fed sets and advances the banks with. Now in Kenya, if you check, it was around 7.something%. Now, in the US, and I'm using just as a comparison, they have had to raise the Fed rate for 11 consecutive times. Why? That is what you call in economics, again I'm repeating, qualitative tightening. You are tightening the economy. You are mopping out money so that you settle on an inflation that is manageable. In Kenya, it is the same, but we don't stop there because we cannot just focus on inflation. In this side of stimulation, other than using monetary tools, we are using production. If you listen to Honorable Badi talking about don't tax, don't do this, what he's just saying is that enlarge disposable income. Leave a lot of money in the pocket of Kenyans for them to spend. That is one way of stimulating the economy using demand. But you can also stimulate the economy using production. And using production, that is where we have actually focused all our resources, both in terms of money and policies. Primary production. He talked about fertilizer. That is one way of attacking economy, stimulating the economy through production. Number two, government-focused industrialization. If you look at our budget and our policies, we are creating industries across all the 47 counties. That is primary economy, I'm talking about fertilizer. If you look at the policy-wise, we are talking about mining. Mining, we are doing a lot. I wish you will have time to talk about it. If you look at fisheries, that is primary production. Yeah. Once you come to secondary production, that is industry. That is where we are having aggregation parks, sparring industry. Once you go to the tertiary, by the way, we are doing a lot. The things we are talking about fiber and internet is not just about fiber and laying fiber. We are attacking stimulation of the economy through the tertiary service side, so that we have many Kenyans even working for other companies outside of Kenya while they're still around. When we get time, I will enumerate much more.